Okay, thank you very much, Sami. Isn't it mind-blowing? The data, the story can tell, the data that's already available. Can you think about your cell phone data from today? What story does it tell about everything you did this morning? Just a little food for thought. Now, I know some of you are wondering what all this is, and we'll have an answer for you in a little bit. But before that, we do have an announcement from yesterday's Innovation Marketplace and Engagement Zone. Thank you so much to those of you who participated. We've selected 20 lucky winners from the raffle, and those folks will be invited to a special mentorship lunch hosted by the Y2Y program, which you heard about yesterday. So if you hear your names now, you will get an email from our manager, Gabby Williams, shortly. So, congratulations to Francina Furman, Inyatur Rahman, Adriana Obregon, Ishak Zaigum, Faduma Ali, Guillermo Diaz Fanas, O'Neill Masamba, Denzel Samuel. We had a little trouble with the handwriting on this one, so apologies if we got it wrong. Sheila Akla, Dina Mansour, Getchen Meng, Kamal Clayton, and Judy Obabatunde, Elizabeth Leonard, Juan Carlos Espinosa Bustillos, Diana Guevara, Runtam Barator, Melis Turca, Tomo Gotoda, and Isha Sharma. Congratulations to you, and enjoy your lunch. We'll miss you. So we now move on to the culmination of months of innovation and risk-taking by hundreds of competitors from across the world. The World Bank Youth Summit Competition is an annual event organized concurrent to the summit, and last year we had nearly 1,400 applicants for 6 spots. Think about that. And from these 6 finalists who presented in Washington, 2 were chosen to be winners. And one of last year's winners was Team Project Cube from Singapore. We are so delighted to have here with us today Chloe Ng, co-founder of Project Cube, which is she's an urban planner by profession. And that is the story behind what you see here on the stage. Project Cube is a modular mobile classroom packed with teaching equipment and learning materials targeting preschool children. The cube can be customized and deployed rapidly with an interest in helping children in areas of high displacement, conflict, and natural disasters. And she was responding to last year's Youth Summit theme of unleashing the power of human capital. Chloe, we now invite you on stage to give us an update on where Project Cube stands 1 year later, and maybe share with our audience any tips for making the most out of this year's Youth Summit. Let's put our hands together for Chloe.
Oh, thank you. Yes, can you hear me? Yeah. Hi everyone, good morning. It's really nice to be back here at the Youth Summit. So I'm Chloe. Hope you guys are enjoying the summit. So a little more about ourselves. Last year we had an idea and we pitched, we put in our proposal, and we were very lucky to have been selected at the summit as the finalist. And we actually received a lot of valuable feedback from people, and we were able to meet people from all over the world, which was very valuable to us because we were familiar with the Southeast Asian market, but not like markets from all around the world. So really encouraging everyone to mingle around, meet more people. And for those who were not able to join us today here, join the conversations online. And also we actually continued a lot of conversations online after the summit. So hope that you guys also continue to build on the networks that you have established here at the summit today. And yeah, so last year we were actually awarded the Audience Choice Award. So a little bit more about our project, and incidentally, our project is actually very related to this year's theme of Resilient City as well. So we all know that early childhood is very important. It actually affects an individual for the rest of their lives. And there are actually over 250 million children that are out of school. And this problem is actually exacerbated in places that have disasters. And 1 in 3 children are actually out of school in areas that are affected by disasters or conflicts. And one reason is because infrastructure is not ready in time, and the more you wait, the longer the children are out of school, the possibility of them returning to school is even lower. And as a response to this, we came up with Project Cube, which is a modular mobile classroom. So we believe that wherever children are, they should have access to education. So we are redefining education infrastructure of the box. So this was what we pitched last year. The idea is to have a classroom packed into a box, and it can open up into a classroom that can feed about 10 to 15 children. And all the parts are modular, which means that if a place needs more chairs, we can actually put more chairs instead of tables and things like that. And we also come with the learning materials, as you can see in the yellow and green box. So we are able to deploy the classroom anywhere, anytime in a very quick manner. And we are also trying to work on bringing the cost down so that it can be really more accessible to anyone, anywhere, very quickly. So I guess you guys must, thank you. So that was the video that you just saw was what we pitched last year. So as you can tell, it was really in the ideation stage where we just had an idea and we rendered it. And today, I'm just really, really excited to share with you guys our first prototype. I guess when you guys walked in, you must be wondering what are these two things on the table. It's actually the first time we are unveiling it at a global platform, and we are very happy to be sharing it with you guys. So I guess when we pitched last year, people were wondering, oh, is this gonna work? Like, are you really able to fit everything into a cube? So as you can see here, we have the cube here. These parts are actually removable, and they actually form the empty spaces that you may be able to see here. And this is a scale model, which means of 1:4, which means that the real thing is actually 4 times bigger. And so these are the shelves, and we actually have some like tweaks, like having like solar panels on top, so that children can access like the materials even if there's no like internet or anything. So we are also working on having Wi-Fi receivers and things like that. So this is the table. This is not the full working prototype. There are some parts that are missing because it's just hard to transport. So like these are the tables, and you can see like there are 2 boxes here where we will actually equip them with learning materials. And the whole idea is that it's modular so that we can switch out the parts, and say if we supply a place with a classroom, we can just very quickly update the learning materials with like just the box and not like the whole cube. So we have just been awarded the Sandbox Innovation Fund from MIT, which we actually used it to build the prototype. And we have also just been accepted into MIT Design X, which is an accelerator to focus on the design and really working with people who have expertise in sustainable materials. So we are hoping to really deploy the cube in the next year. So that's where we are now, and we've come a long way from like just having an idea to really proceeding to deploy the cube. And we would love to have more conversations with people here who are interested in our idea. And thank you very much for having me back here, and have a great day ahead and enjoy the summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chloe. That was an inspiring start to a morning of more pitches like this. So this year, the competition is on Smarter Cities for a Resilient Future. and it has challenged young changemakers to harness smart technology to address the rising impacts of climate change and pollution in smart cities and promote urban inclusion to enhance social, political, and economic empowerment. Today, I'm asking you all, please do judge. There are two winners that you're going to see today. The audience choice winner, whom you will be deciding with your voting, and instructions on that later. Voting opens in a short while. And the jury winner, who will be decided by our esteemed panel of judges seated here in the front. To tell us more about how the process worked, it's been months in the making, and how it will culminate today, I invite on stage Annie Liang, the Youth Summit Competition lead. Annie is an operations analyst for health, nutrition, and population at the World Bank. She supports task teams on analytics preparation and implementation of health projects in East and Southern Africa. Before joining the bank, she worked for Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to open this year's Youth Summit Competition, which is an accumulation of many months of love and labor. Cities, as you know, are places of great opportunity. Globally, 4 billion people, more than half the global population, live in cities, and rapid urbanization at this scale presents unprecedented challenges. This year, the Youth Summit Competition, we put two big questions out into the world. By 2030, 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities. Cities cover less than 2% of the Earth's surface area, yet are responsible for over 70% of the global greenhouse gases. Climate change and pollution remains one of the most pressing issues of our generation, yet countries most affected are often least able to deal with the consequences. How do we tackle climate change and pollution in urban spaces? While 80% of the global GDP is created in cities, which represent places of immense opportunity, the urban inclusion agenda reminds us that not everyone will have equal access to growth and opportunity. We talk about artificial intelligence and technology, but we never talk about the equity issue, about what happens to low-skilled labor with the influx of new technologies and the intergenerational poverty loops that trap the urban poor and may exclude them from lifting themselves out of poverty. How do we ensure the inclusion of the urban poor socially, politically, economically in the growth of cities? This year, we sent out the call for proposals to 993 tech hubs, incubators, and co-working spaces across 108 countries, with heavily targeting into emerging markets. We received a total of 885 proposals across 98 countries, with 26% of this year's proposals coming from Africa. This slide shows the countries that we have received proposals from this year, and there's a lot of diversity in terms of location and in terms of countries. We went through a 5-stage review process with the initial screening of proposals based on the relevancy to the theme, a scoring, 2 rounds of technical reviews, and an interview. If we were to cost this out, and we are the World Bank, the competition segment of the Youth Summit took a collective of 500 volunteer hours over the course of the last 2.5 months to coordinate. I could not have done this alone, and the competition is what it is today because I have had the privilege of standing on the shoulder of giants. I am eternally grateful to my phenomenal team of 14 passionate young professionals that span both the IFC and the World Bank, as well as both in Washington, D.C. and in country offices, who have been with me every step of the way during the shortlisting process of the proposals. I'd like to thank all the technical reviewers within the World Bank Group that have willingly volunteered their time, their evenings and weekends to provide technical feedback to this year's proposals. Our technical experts span subject areas like citizen engagement, urban agriculture, waste management, transportation, financial inclusion, disaster risk management, urban development, and leveraging the informal economy, mimicking the diversity proposals, tackling intersectional urban challenges. I'd also like to personally thank Emmanuel Kashka of 1863 Ventures, who had worked with each of our finalist teams this year to shape their upcoming pitch decks. 1863 Ventures focuses on bridging the gap between entrepreneurship and equity, with a focus of their investment pipeline on founders traditionally underrepresented, such as women-owned enterprises or minority demographics, well aligned to the spirit of this year's challenge on urban inclusion. I'd like to also thank all the technical mentors, as well as last year's finalists, who have dedicated and donated time to have one-on-one sessions with this year's finalists to provide additional technical and personal mentorship in the lead-up to the Youth Summit. This brings me to our esteemed jury panel, who will be judging this year's competition. I'd love if you could briefly introduce yourself, maybe starting with Edward, 1 minute down the line, so the audience can get to know you better as well.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Ed Su. I've been at the World Bank for about 15 years, and I'm a senior advisor on disruptive technologies within the infrastructure vice presidency. Very happy to be here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nayada Kumbuli. I'm a director of investments at Calvert Impact Capital, an impact investing firm based out of DC. I focus on renewable energy, climate change, and financial inclusion as part of my investment portfolio at Calvert, and we've lent about $2.5 billion in capital across the globe to entrepreneurs and organizations focusing on social and environmental impact.
I'm just going to ask you all to hold your applause for the very end for our judging panel, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sanjeet Pandit. I head up the Smart Cities practice at Qualcomm here in the United States. I'm responsible for working with system integrators, governments, agencies, banks, all the ecosystem partners for deploying smart cities across the world. We focus not only on smart cities, but smart verticals such as smart schools, smart ports, smart airports, smart mosques, anything that we can make smarter. We are the leaders in semiconductors. In case of you guys don't know, we have invented technologies right from CDMA to EVDO to 4G, and now we were the first to come up with the 5G. So looking forward to judging this competition and interacting with the rest of the esteemed colleagues. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Xiaoming Mo. I'm with the Disruptive Technologies and Funds Group at IFC. I've been with IFC for 11 years, out of which 8 were based in China, doing venture capital investments in climate change, healthcare, education, transport, etc. Since last year, I am now heading the venture capital funds program at IFC.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Da Silva. I'm IFC's Global Cities Lead, and IFC works with cities to provide investment and advisory solutions for some of their challenges. We work with the World Bank and Same's team a lot, as he mentioned, and my role is really in helping to identify what some of the new and emerging trends are and how IFC should be positioning themselves and what the products offerings are for cities and how we scale that up to be able to deliver in a systematic way.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Debets, a Dutchman based in Brussels. I represent the voice of angel investing today. I work at an association representing about 40,000 angel investors in Europe, and I work daily with them and represent them towards the European institutions and see how the EU can deliver for them. Giving the angel perspective today, I really want to focus on the team and their flexibility, diversity, talent, skill, but most importantly, their grit for the journey ahead. Thank you very much.
Good morning. What an honor to be here. My name is Leslie Goh. I was the former CTO of the World Bank Group. Now I'm advising several of our projects around the world on how do we scale up with technology to address the SDG goals around the world in emerging countries. I was also very much involved in several of the smart city projects in the past, and currently sitting on the board of directors for Singapore GovTech. So smart city is a very important topic, close and dear to my heart, and also to see the young leaders within the World Bank Group pull it together to organize this event is really heartwarming, and a really important shout out to all the wonderful thought process and hard work that goes into putting this event together. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel of judges.
Thank you. Can we have a round of applause for our judging panel, please? This year, the selection process was highly competitive, and we can only bring 5 teams on stage out of the 885 submissions that came in this year. Some of you who have submitted proposals might be in this room, others might be watching through the live stream. I had the opportunity to review many of your proposals and read about the inspirational work you are doing among your own communities. I hope you take this year's rejection, if you are not on the stage, not as a no, but simply as a not yet, and that you will continue to share your ideas and inspirations out to the larger world stage. Show us what it looks like to make things happen, and then come back one day and present on our stage. On behalf of the entire 2019 Youth Summit Competition team, I wish you all the best in making the world a better place for all of us. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Annie. Thanks for being the force behind this amazing opportunity for us and for the finalists. So with that, we move into the pitch competition. As Annie said, we received 885 proposals from 98 countries. Standing before you today will be the 5 chosen teams. They come from Zimbabwe, Nepal, Colombia, India, and Nigeria. How this is going to work. I am going to start by asking the finalists one question on their journeys, after which they will have exactly 7 minutes to pitch the project to you. We will be setting a very stern timer. Afterwards, the team will remain on stage, during which time the jury will have 8 minutes to ask them questions. Again, we ask that you keep your questions and answers concise to be respectful of time and schedule. Audience members, the live voting has begun, and we don't have a lot of time. It ends at 1:30 p.m. So please, I urge you, as you're listening, you hear something you like, make mental note and vote before 1:30. You can do this through the mobile app or using the website version of the app, crowd.cc/Youth Summit 2019. So without further ado, let's welcome our first finalist on stage, Hope Nonlevu with Tuvol Smart Commuting. I have a clicker for you. There we go. Thank you.
Good morning.
Okay, so can you hear me now? Okay, so Hope, I hear you have, I love the name, by the way. I hear you have a fascinating story about your decision to focus on smart commuting. Why? Why did you land there?
I did my undergraduate here in the USA, but before I came to the USA to study, I used to commute to public high school in Zimbabwe. It was an absolute hassle, primarily because the primary mode of transport in most African countries are what we call matatus or minibuses. They have a capacity of about 15, and they are essentially, in the private sector, or rather the informal sector, extremely disorganized. You can't get to anywhere on time. And I was late to school almost every day as a result of the way they operate. And I think primarily one of the, while, I think at school I eventually sort of managed to do really well and come to the US on a scholarship. I think the vast majority of students that I went to school with really struggled at school primarily because they lose a lot of productive time if you are late to school by an hour or 30 minutes, already you're losing something. You're at school, you're probably tired. When you're going back home at 4 or 5 p.m., you get home at 7, you don't even have time to do homework. So eventually it actually affects a lot of people in the way they conduct their daily lives. So I think when I was at college, I thought about a particular problem that I would like to solve back home, and this really stuck out to me because I felt a very personal connection to it, and also with acquiring computer science skills, I was like, yeah, I think we can solve this.
Wonderful. And for any policymakers in the audience online or here, this is a story that touches across sectors, education and transport. So mental note. And now it's over to you to pitch to us.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Hope Ndlovu. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. A show of hands if you've ever used public transportation. Keep your hand up if you have ever been late using public transportation. That actually is the case for a lot of Africans who live, ordinary Africans who live in cities and rural areas. We all know that the frustration of being late to school or to work as a result of public transportation, but for Africans this is a thing that happens all the time. This is primarily because of some very structural issues. Public transportation in African countries is exclusively cash-based. It is heavily privatized, but it's not run by big corporations. It's essentially run by small to medium enterprises with millions of vehicles that have no schedules, and this essentially brings out the whole inconvenience to commuters. There's very limited government regulation because this is primarily the informal sector, and essentially there are very few standards on how to actually deliver service to commuters. So to highlight the problem that exists, there are three primary stakeholders. There are operators, there are drivers, and there are commuters. Operators essentially, without any way of knowing how many trips a day or how many commuters a driver picks up, they essentially struggle with a lot of inconsistencies with ticketing. They essentially operate at they have suboptimal operations. Drivers have no schedules. They waste a lot of fuel driving around looking for commuters. And then commuters are the real victims of this whole thing. They're late to pretty much everything. So a perfect solution to this is a solution that helps operators reduce operational costs and increase revenue, reduce revenue leakages. It's one that helps drivers increase the number of commuters per trip and the number of trips per day. A perfect solution is one that decreases wait times for commuters and improves on customer safety and service. We came up with a solution to this problem at Tuvol. Tuvol is an app that seeks to make public transportation cheaper and more accessible to commuters by helping public transport operators reduce operational costs, optimize their routes, and increase revenue. So we have two apps. We have a commuter app, and the commuter app essentially helps commuters to do real-time tracking of public transportation. It helps commuters pay for their public transportation using fintech, and they can just basically order public transportation on demand. The whole goal is to help commuters connect with public transportation with ease. We have an operator app that helps operators to manage their fleet, to do route optimization, and to collect digital payments using fintech. And the idea is to essentially improve operational efficiency and increase revenue for operators. For us to be sustainable, we essentially have a B2B business model. So we charge public transport operators for using the app, right? And for intercity trips, for example, we could be charging like something equivalent of $72 a day. For minibuses, we're charging a weekly subscription of $40 a week. And for taxis, we're charging a commission for every taxi trip that commuters pick up. So some of you might ask, how big is this market? So public transportation in all of Africa is a total addressable market of 60 billion, and then there's a serviceable, obtainable market of about $10 billion US. This market is obtainable because it's essentially the demographic of commuters between the age of 18 to 24 and operators 20 to 34. These are generic millennials and Gen Zs who are very tech-savvy. I believe that if we start there, we could actually sort of scale really well. So competition really is something interesting. So there are obviously some big guns in there. There's Uber, there's Lyft, there's Google Maps and Wanderoo. But part of the problem with these big tech companies that are usually based in the West is that they actually are not a perfect fit for the African market. This is primarily because of this. 80% of daily commuters use minibuses, right? And taxi services are not a good fit because they come across as a luxury for the rich or for the tourist. We're the only app essentially that is primarily targeting minibuses and trying to solve this problem the way we see it. I think we're one of those companies that are probably going to be easier to scale because public transportation in African countries is essentially the same from Cape Town in South Africa to Cairo in Egypt. And that essentially makes it easy for us to scale from country to country. Our timelines as of now, we're currently conducting a pilot in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe with 30 operators and 250 commuters. By February, we at least hope to have about 200 operators and hope to scale that, hope to increase our commuters to 15,000 by the end of the year. So our core team includes me, graduated from Harvard University with a degree in electrical engineering. We have a COO from Williams College and our other CTO from electrical engineer from Harvard as well. So we have a wealth of mentors who bring a lot of guidance and from operations to branding and product development. We have some interns from George Washington University that we've been working with for the past 6 months, and they've been really serving us well at product development and marketing. So in the past, we've participated in the Health Incubator, which is literally 10 minutes down here in Washington, D.C. We've done Mass Challenge Boston, and we have done also the Watson Institute. So our next round, we're hoping to raise about $150,000 US as a pre-seed round in February. And that will help us get 200 commuters and 200 operators and 15,000 commuters. So public transportation really is a core to smart and resilient cities. A lot of commuters lose very valuable productive time. And if you compound that for each person, that's essentially billions of dollars worth of productive time that is lost every year. Not to mention operators will actually waste a lot of fuel and man hours on suboptimal operations when they're picking up commuters. We hope that Tuvol is going to come out and really sort of help this system operate at a very high efficiency. So with this, I say, let's make public transportation in African countries smarter together. Thank you.
Excellent, and with 30 seconds to spare, good job. And we now move to 8 minutes of questions from the panel of judges.
Thank you. Go ahead. When you go. Okay, I'll very quickly. Maybe thank you so much. A wonderful presentation. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the signing up the operators. What is the level of access they have in terms of their cell phone usage or mobile app usage, their level of skills that they're able to actually sign up to your platform?
So one of the reasons why we're starting with Zimbabwe, thank you, that's a very interesting question. One of the reasons why we're starting with Zimbabwe is, first of all, I'm from there. It's a really cool country, trust me. But this is why it's interesting. So Zimbabwe essentially has one of the highest internet penetration rates in Zimbabwe, and one of the highest sort of mobile uses of mobile money, fintech. For most of you from Kenya, M-Pesa. We have EcoCash in Zimbabwe, which is slightly similar. And what's good about it is that pretty much most people that live in urban cities essentially use cell phones. So it's going to be easy to sign up people in that way, and we don't have to sort of ask them to change their behaviors in a big way. So this being said, I feel like this is a very perfect market for this kind of product. But we do have a launch strategy for operators, and it essentially, we're currently conducting our pilot, and we're working with the Public Transport Union to sort of onboard and sign up operators. And we hope that if we scale that model from city to city in Zimbabwe, we could sort of capture a lot of operators by mostly engaging with public transport operators.
Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. Number one, for implementation of this kind of solutions, you require data, and data is a very important piece of this entire network. What is the current data penetration and the coverage from the cellular operators in this market? Mm-hmm. Number two, can you articulate very crisply why do you feel existing competition like Uber and everybody would not target minibuses?
Thank you. That's a So I'll go back to talking about data. So we're actually thinking about partnering with telecoms companies. And in Zimbabwe, there's Net1, Telecel, and Econet. And one of the biggest problems that exist in Zimbabwe and a lot of African countries is that data is actually very expensive relative to other parts of the country. So we're hoping that at least we can figure out a way to get what we call data bundles, particularly for Tuvol, where, for example, people actually buy data cheaper if they're actually using our app. And that obviously cannot be done without partnering with these stakeholders, telecommunication companies. And then to talk about why companies like Uber and Lyft and Google Maps are not really targeting this particular market is one of the reasons Uber actually is already launched in a lot of African countries. That includes Kenya, South Africa, Ghana. And one of the problems that they're actually struggling with right now is the fact that it's the premise on which the apps are actually built on. And that is that anyone can actually drive a public transportation vehicle. But with most of these countries, for you to drive a public transportation vehicle, you need a special license, your vehicle needs to be serviced, you need all of these different permits that don't essentially fit into the model of companies like Uber and Lyft and all of that. So we at least have a competitive advantage on that end, that we're essentially working with existing public transport operators who have the licensing that they require to actually operate, and we don't have to sort of work with sort of new, or rather add new entrants into the market. The second part is backlash, and that's because based on that premise, if anyone can drive a public transportation vehicle, that actually increases the supply of public transport and increases competition for existing operators. And that actually has led to, backlash in South Africa with Ubers being banned and all kinds of things. So I hope that sort of answers your question.
I have a question about the operators, and you said there are millions of these operators. So even though you're a 2B business, it's still going to be kind of difficult to acquire all of these your customers, these millions of customers, right? They tend to be very fragmented. Have you considered also the amount of cash that you're going to need perhaps in subsidies? I know that in countries like China, when Didi started, they really had to subsidize those drivers in order to change their behavior. Uber didn't win in China, which is great for Didi, but it was a lot of work that they had to put in and a lot of cash that they had to burn in order to get there.
Yeah, yes, you're absolutely right. Like, I think having a lot of a million sort of operators that are operating in African cities is actually a very big positive, right? Because part of the problem with cities, usually, like I'll use DC as an example. There's the circulator buses and there's the metro. For you to actually get a contract with the city or something like that, there's a procurement process, right? If they don't like your product, essentially your product is dead. But because it's millions of them, you can convince one person, you can convince the other, you can convince the other. One person might not like it today, might like it next year, and that's sort of a competitive advantage and makes it a very, very good product to sort of like actually launch in African country. You can get feedback, you can change a feature, and those people that you didn't convince previously might be convinced tomorrow. So that's a very good thing. And then with subsidies, I think at the moment we are running a pilot, and it's a free pilot. We're not actually charging operators for anything, and we hope that as we raise some more capital, we'll sort of like continue with that kind of model. And then eventually, sort of like when we actually start charging operators, we'll have built enough critical mass.
Thanks. Quick question. Africa's got lots of different countries, and so I'm curious, what pieces of your business model are easily replicable when you move into a new market, and what parts you really need to start over, building new networks, building new relationships, et cetera? And then I just want to confirm, at the end of the day, this application is limited to those who have access to technology, correct?
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. So with Africa, like you say, there are 54 countries in Africa, and each of them have different politics and things like that. But what really makes that whole continent one country is public transportation and how it runs. So the parts that are easy to replicate actually is sort of like signing up public transport operators. That part is pretty straightforward. The part that's slightly different is that in different African countries, for example, in Zimbabwe, public transport operators, when they are charging their fares, they just have a flat fee. So whether you are traveling 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, you still pay the same amount. In South Africa, however, just next door, they charge per unit kilometer or per unit 5 kilometers or something like that. So we obviously have to change our model based on how operators actually charge their consumers. And we feel that that's something that we're obviously going to have to change as we scale from one African country to another.
I have a question around the technology behind this, the intellectual property that will make this unique, that's hard to replicate. Because you already analyzed the competitors in this space. I know you talk about minibus, but what are the tech part of it that is hard to replicate?
So I think part of what's going to be, I think, hard to replicate really at the end of the day is data, is access to data, right? By data, I mean, like, for example, things like currently Google Maps is actually, you can find addresses and locations of places easily, but with African countries, right, about 80 to 90% of cities are not addressable, right? So, for example, if you sit on one part of the city and you order an Uber or something like that, the Uber actually may not find you and may not find the location where you're going, and that's something that's difficult. So we're already starting the process of actually gathering those data sets about different locations, houses, and things like that. And that's obviously going to be part of a data set that we have and that most companies won't have. And I believe that's something that we will sort of like hold on to. But from a tech level, software is software. Software can always be replicated.
Thank you. That concludes our 8 minutes of questions. Let's give Hope another round of applause for not easy questions. Okay, so all of you are judges today, and I hope you're taking notes, making decisions. We now move on to our next finalist, who is here all the way from Nepal. Ayushi KC, founder of Khaliisi Recycling Hero.
Hello.
There we go. Okay, welcome to the stage, Ayushi.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So you are working on the informal waste management ecosystem in Nepal, which tends to be largely informal. Can you tell us a bit about why it's so largely informal, and then maybe talk a bit about how you came to land on that sector?
Yeah, well, I could find a lot of studies done around the recycling part of the value chain, the processing part of the value chain, but there was very little study done on the people involved in this ecosystem. So when I started researching, I found that there is actually an incredible decentralized supply chain of informal waste entrepreneurs that have been incentivized to recover materials from source. So I was curious to learn how they collect the materials, how they sell the materials, how they process the materials. So that was what got Khaliisi started up, and now we are a technology-based social enterprise that works on leveraging this informal ecosystem of waste entrepreneurs to potentially decrease the amount of waste that ends up in the landfill.
Beautiful, and that's a segue into your 7-minute pitch.
Thanks. So globally, we dump a massive 2 billion tons of waste every year. And this stunning amount of trash is partly because 99% of the stuff that we buy is trashed within 6 months, but largely because 1/4 of the world's population, that's just close to 2 billion people, still do not have access to proper waste collection system. Now in the western part of the world, with the traditional waste management ecosystem, people separate their waste at source. There's curbside collection that makes sure that only stuff that has zero value ends up in the landfill. But in the developing world, this system is in crisis. Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal, alone generates 500,000 tons of waste every year. And over 90% of that is dumped in the poorly managed landfills. So that's also because it is extremely difficult and expensive for the municipalities and the government to collect this waste, especially from small and medium waste generators like households and small enterprises. And also, can you imagine, despite this opportunity to create more jobs, to save the environment by recycling, Why aren't we recycling? It's because recycling is still a solution for a problem that exists at the end of the value chain. If you do not have a collection system that can actually collect in a reliable fashion, then it means nothing. So it is actually, the problem is actually at the source, that is collection and its scalability. And also, the current practice of using trucks to collect waste is simply It's simply not scalable, it's expensive, and it's not environmental friendly. Can you imagine the number of trucks that will require to navigate these narrow roads just to collect small units of trash every single day? We'll need thousands of them, just not scalable. So nevertheless, in this whole vacuum, there exists a network of informal waste ecosystem consisting of waste buyers and a series of middlemen up until we find a processor to process this waste. However, there is one huge challenge, that is of information asymmetry. The waste buyers do not know where the waste generators are, and the waste generators do not know where the waste buyers are. Thus, the waste buyers cannot collect enough waste to sell it to the processor, avoiding all the middleman cost, whereas the waste generators have to pay to the trucks that come to collect all the trash to be dumped in the landfill. Thus, instead of viewing this informality as a challenge, we started Khaliisi a year and a half ago as a technology-based platform that actually leverages this network, this existing network of informal waste entrepreneurs, to potentially decrease the amount of waste that is being sent to the landfills and contribute to a more circular economy. And to start, in Nepal, we figured that there are about 13,000 of such waste entrepreneurs just in the capital who have all the basic assets required to start the business: a cycle for collection and transportation, a low-cost smartphone, and also they carry working capital of around $500 to $1,000 to actually pay to the waste generators. So if we have thousands of such waste entrepreneurs, why are we still dumping 500,000 tons of waste into the landfills every year? So to start, we started the platform by connecting such waste entrepreneurs with the waste generators. So this is how it works. Anyone with trash, that is the waste generator, can schedule a pickup of their waste through our web platform or through social media or through phone call upon their convenience for items such as paper waste, scrap metal, plastic waste, and other waste. And we've already seen a 60% diversion of waste from ending up in the landfill through our platform. And just like Uber, a waste entrepreneur nearest to the location is notified for the pickup. He can accept or decline the offer, and it saves him a lot of time. So he actually ends up earning $300 more through our platform every month. And at the waste generators, the waste entrepreneur pays the waste seller on average $20 per pickup. And for a household, it might take 2 months to accumulate that amount of trash. But for others, the turnover is much faster. And also, the waste seller has an option to redeem points or cash for his or her contribution based on the dashboard that is maintained out of every transaction detail that is recorded in our backend. Now, immediately after the waste entrepreneur collects the waste, he then sells it at a collection center that he can find in every 5 minutes in the city. Here, the waste is sorted and made ready to be sent further into the value chain. The waste entrepreneur sells it at a profit margin of average 50 to 100%, thus earning at least $12,000 a year. So this is how we make revenue from this entire model. It's a commission-based revenue model. As we are providing the waste entrepreneurs better access to waste generators, we charge a 10% commission on the amount that he pays to the waste seller. So for example, if the waste entrepreneur is paying $20 to the seller, he'll pay $2 to us as the platform and eventually make $10 in profit when he sells it further into the value chain. However, it's not easy. You cannot just tell people to recycle. You have to encourage them, especially the waste generators and the waste entrepreneurs in our part of the world. don't have much of formal education. So you need to encourage them. And in the past, we've held a lot of activities with the youth groups, with children, with women groups. And now with a growing network of 300 plus waste entrepreneurs, we've been able to recycle and save 2,000 plus tons of waste from ending up in the landfill. And none of this would have been possible without this amazing decentralized supply chain of waste entrepreneurs who are extremely hardworking and extremely well networked. And with them, we can now see a future where there is zero waste, where people can build businesses around our model, and where we can empower millions of people through our business model and create an economy around waste. Namaste, and thank you.
Thank you. Again, with time to spare, okay, over to our judges. We have 8 minutes on the clock.
Thank you for that very good presentation. Can you tell us a little bit more about your customer acquisition plan? In particular, what are the businesses or the kind of households that you are targeting and why? And then the second part of that question is, where do you see the key barriers for scale?
So anyone with trash is potentially our client, the waste seller. But right now, 60% of our clientele is the households, the small and medium waste generators, because our model allows us to even collect small units of trash that otherwise would be extremely expensive for the municipalities to collect. So it's usually small and medium generators like households and apartments and small businesses. But beside that, we also do bulk collection from factories and industries that we can easily sell through the waste entrepreneurs to the processors, thus also eliminating a lot of middlemen costs that the waste entrepreneur would have otherwise had to pay for. And sorry, what was your next question?
Barriers to scale.
Sure. So here, right now, we're focusing on building a tech platform that will allow us to easily connect these waste entrepreneurs to the waste sellers directly. And right now, a lot of the operations are very manual, so it only allows us to do a couple of hundred orders a day. But in order to take it to thousands and possibly millions later, we'll need to have a very solid low-tech innovation platform that is very user-friendly to these waste entrepreneurs as well.
Sorry. Oh. Yeah, thank you for your wonderful presentation. I have two questions. First, relating to your team. I'm not sure how big your team is, and how do you see this develop your team? Where do you see the biggest challenge that needs to be fixed by getting an extra teammate, if you will? And secondly, I was just a bit wondering, what are your barriers to accessing these waste entrepreneurs? Because it sort of, for me, it kind of resembles like what window cleaners are in Europe. They have a very established hierarchy, which is defended to the tooth, to which access points they have access to, if you will. So I'm wondering if this is the same for waste entrepreneurs.
All right, so in terms of team, we have a tech team, we have a branding and communications team, we have a logistics team that directly deals with, works with the waste entrepreneurs. And because our work is operations intensive, and we're very asset light, we do not essentially own any of the resources. So it's operations heavy. So the way I look at it in the future is to have more of supply chain logistics and experts, and if you will, in the team who can actually work on strategizing the mobilization of such waste entrepreneurs and the different types of waste along the value chain according to the category. And in terms of recruiting these waste entrepreneurs into the network, well, to be very honest, these are very traditional and, in a sense, very traditional about the choice they make in terms of the people they work with and the level of work that they do. So it was extremely difficult for me as also as a lady to work with such a patriarchal group of men. So it was difficult initially to break the barrier, but since after a few months of prototype, they understood the value of being on the platform, that is, that they get more money through the platform. So it happened such that they actually recruited other waste entrepreneurs from amongst their network into our system by themselves. So I believe that's a good word of mouth in their network. So it came through them. And we actually used that and scaled that to recruit more of such Khaliisi, the waste entrepreneurs, we call them Khaliisi friends, to recruit these waste entrepreneurs through their network essentially, because they're bound by their areas and they know everyone in their area. So that's how we took up the recruitment process.
Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that the waste sellers or the waste generators, once they get paid by the waste entrepreneurs, that you mentioned that they could redeem points or something like that. They could spend it. I'm wondering how they would spend it, and if you thought about partnering with like e-commerce sites or partnering with some other entities so that your waste entrepreneurs are not just collecting waste, but they're also doing deliveries, so that your circular economy also includes the part of the economy that's generating a lot of the waste and the cardboard boxes and the plastics and such.
Yes, one example was we partnered with a national daily newspaper where we actually gave them points that could be redeemed for the newspaper's annual subscription. So a lot of people took that points instead of cash.
Sorry, do they not read things? Is it all paper-based newspaper you're talking about?
The partners?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was newspapers, yes.
And I'm just wondering if people are moving on to like digital.
Oh no,
or
it's going to take some time in Nepal.
Okay.
It's going to take some time in our part of the world. But yeah, a lot of people did redeem points for the discount on the annual subscription. But there have been interesting collaborations with Women Group, where we're also trying to find market access for products that they never collected before. For example, denims. So we actually paid the waste sellers for their used jeans, used denim jackets, and we actually gave it out to a women group who made school supplies like bags and folders out of the denims. So it was a whole new market for the waste sellers, for our waste entrepreneurs, and also an economic opportunity for the women group to make money out of waste. So that's the whole concept of, creating an economy out of waste, and that's just a start, and maybe closing the loop by using this platform. And once we have this network, we can, like you mentioned, we can use it for other services to move along the other verticals in the value chain, like even supply and collect waste items that were never collected before.
I like thank you very much for the great presentation, and also love the fact that you have the courage and conviction as a woman leader in your startup to make this happen and focusing on environment. And one thing that I kind of tack onto the topic around partnership. Partnership is a very important part of scaling the whole entire ecosystem, and this space is complex. I also like the fact that you partner with women, but large organization could really help with this whole scale topic, especially on digitalization. I think that's an important one. When you partner with organization that has a CSR arm, they'll focus a lot on this ESG. So I'd love for you to comment on that as well.
Yes, so the government has recently announced a CSR budget that all the corporates have to maintain, and that's what we're leveraging on again, as we're trying to partner with big corporates and also with agencies like World Bank and IFC, where we can do some more research and digitalize, like you said, digitize the entire process and innovate the system as a whole. So it was part of the partnership that we were able to carry off the denim project as well, upcycling the denim project. Yeah.
I have one last question before we go on. Governments change more faster than clothes in Nepal. And the CGI numbers and everything, implementations, budgets can move anytime. What percentage are you covering right now? And where do you see yourself within 3 years, if this keeps going? What percentage of Nepal do you think you'll implement besides Kathmandu?
Well, we're planning to move up to other 4 Tier 2 cities outside Kathmandu in the next year, that is. So after that, by raising additional investment, we seek to go on to other Tier 3 cities where there are still, where there's a network of existing waste entrepreneurs. And in cities where there aren't established waste entrepreneurs, we plan to create waste entrepreneurs. And by that time...
That's good. What percentage do you think you'll be able to cover in 3 years?
In 3 years of Nepal, I would say 60% maybe.
Can I ask a question on the opposite end? What's the capacity of the processors? I mean, who are they, and are there limits to their capacity and demand for recyclable goods? And like what, in Nepal and then potential outside of, in other countries, is it limited by the existence of?
Yes, it is, unfortunately, because for the longest time we were sending off our stuff to countries like China and India. And with the recent ban in importing of such waste items from such countries, there is a huge problem, but also a huge opportunity for businesses to come up as processors and recyclers within the country. So right now, we're still sending most of our stuff to India as raw material, not as direct waste. So, which is why we're also, again, going back to the denim recycling project, we did that because we couldn't find a processor who could actually process the cloth waste. So there are many processors who aren't there in Nepal yet, but right now they're still sending off to India, and we're focusing more on the collection part. So yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Ayushi. Let's give her a round of applause. So our next finalists come also from a little farther south, but closer to here. From Colombia, we have Mercedes Bidart and Gonzalo Ortega with their project Khipu. Let's welcome them on stage. Hey.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Okay, Mercedes, so I apologize. It's just you today representing the team, but I hear that your team has a very interesting composition, and it was very intentional. Tell us a bit about what your team looks like.
Yes, so we are 5 co-founders. We are all coming from Latin America, mainly from Argentina and Colombia. I'm from Argentina. And we've been working in these communities in informal settlements for years from different backgrounds. So one of us is a computer scientist. We have also an architect, an urban economist, a city planner, and political scientist. So we are coming from different backgrounds, and we met studying city planning at MIT.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, take it away.
We are in Villas de San Pablo, Barranquilla, a low-income neighborhood in Colombia inhabited by 10,000 residents. The town is brimming with micro-entrepreneurs, but they lack access to basic resources like capital, credit history, and financial liquidity. Daniris and her husband run a small restaurant. Juan runs a construction business. Julia sells woven shoes and handbags. They aren't alone. 60% of the global workforce is part of the informal economy. With Khipu, communities like Villas de San Pablo can run commerce on their phones and use a digital trading system to pay for local goods and services. And they build credit, unlocking access to equitable financial services.
One-third of the world urban population live under a structural poverty trap. They live in places that look like this, also known as informal settlements or slums. $10 trillion are transacted annually in these communities. However, they are still living under the poverty line. They face 3 main barriers to growth: lack of information, few or non-existent cash flow, and lack of access to capital. Most people living in these communities are unbanked. Their only access to financial services is informal predatory lending that charges 200% of interest rate or more. But they have smartphones. In Colombia, our pilot market, the smartphone penetration is 65%, and they have strong community networks. And there's where we come in. We are creating Khipu. We are removing the barriers to commerce by creating digital community marketplaces to trade goods and services using tokens. Quipus were the record-keeping devices used by the Incas for census data and transactions. And we are coming back to the roots of trading and record-keeping. And let me show you how this works. So Daniris creates a business profile on the Khipu app, and we provide a few starter tokens to all first-time users. Daniris receives a food order on the Khipu app, and with her starter tokens and her earned tokens, she's able to buy handmade fashion to Julia, like this one. And now Julia, after selling her handcrafted shoes and fashion, is able to pay empanadas to Rafael. All this chain of transactions happen on the Khipu app using tokens instead of pesos. These tokens are not a cryptocurrency. They are backed by the production of the community, and they are meant for exchange and not for accumulation. We are creating trading systems that increase purchasing power and allow our users exchange even when there's not enough cash. And also we are helping them save their cash for other expenses like education. And our marketplaces are a launchpad from financial uncertainty to financial prosperity. We are creating huge amount of data on how these economies work, the spending patterns of the informal economy that is not existent today. And we are leveraging this encrypted data to create alternative credit scores and unlock access to equitable financial services. I'm Mercedes Vidart. I'm the co-founder of Khipu. This is the team. As I was saying, we are technologists, urban planners, and economists. We've been working in these communities for years in Latin America and globally. And we started a year ago designing Khipu with a community in Barranquilla, the people you saw in the video. Now we iterated the product several times. We won different competitions. We went through 2 accelerators. And we have a partnership with a microfinance institution in Colombia with whom we are designing the alternative credit score. Can cities be smart if 1/3 of them are excluded? We don't think so. That's why we ask you to join us in helping millions of families use tech to design their own economies and transition from survival to opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, maybe one quick question. If you could talk a little bit more about what you see as the future of these tokens. You say it's not a cryptocurrency, and I understand that. You say they're not for accumulation, but they seem to be an alternative form of currency you're creating. Why wouldn't people accumulate them? Why wouldn't people use them as currency? How are you differentiating them from an alternative currency?
Yes, so they are a complement of the cash economy, like the fiat currency. What we realized, and that's why we started designing this, is that there's a point in the month where there's demand and offer, but some transactions are not happening because there's not enough cash. So in these places, we call them place-based informal economies because they have a geography and they're part of these communities where there's a chain of transactions in place already happening. The thing is that bartering is not efficient. And they usually say, okay, we don't have enough cash, so I want to buy what you have, you want to sell what you have, but we cannot do this transaction, right? So we are introducing this voucher system, it's called mutual credit system, where they can use it to transact to one another even when there's not cash available. So it's not replacing cash, but it's a complement.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Love the way you described the problem and also the connection with new technology like a token base. But I'm always very skeptical when someone says that I'm going to use blockchain or token technology, because a lot of times they're just doing it because they need more attention. But it seems like there is some purpose and value behind this, but I also am curious about how do you really scale this out? Because when you're talking about people who are at the base of the pyramid, they don't have education, much less data or financial literacy. How do you really get them to adopt something like this?
Yes, so first of all, yes, we agree with you. We are not on the blockchain yet. There's no necessity to be on that. Like, we are creating these local trading systems where really, we say tokens for people to understand, but it's literally not a cryptocurrency, as I was explaining. And basically, we started designing this with them. The platform looks like this. I can show you a bit like How it is a web-based app, and this is the neighborhood. These are all the people that have their stores there, and they use the smartphones for WhatsApp and Facebook every day. So that's how we ended up designing it, and it had a lot of iterations with the users. This is made by one of our users. I mean, it's something that we are working on the user experience, but also we know that they are obviously capable of use this type of technology because we design it together.
I guess one question is, I mean, like Bitcoin and all that, there's a price to it, and the price fluctuates a lot. Let's say somebody makes money, and I'm like a vendor on this, and I make enough money, but somehow I want to pay for my kids' education. How does that, do I take it out? Is it one-to-one? How does that equal to pesos?
Yes, so it's one-to-one.
Okay.
And the thing is that you can choose how much of what you are selling you will receive in the local voucher system token, or you will receive in pesos, because you need to buy your supplies, right? You need to pay for the school education.
Right.
So the idea is for you to save those pesos for things that you don't find in your community, and use the trading system for the things you find in your community.
Got it. And I wanted to ask another question.
Sure.
You're doing some credit scoring based on the
Yes.
data that you're collecting. And I just want to ask that access to financing that you're providing to these micro entrepreneurs, I don't know if you're doing it now, but if that's in the future, are you doing that out of your own balance sheet, or is it you're partnering with local banks? And have you already gotten banks excited about this?
Yes, yes. So we have a partnership with a microfinance institution called Fundación Mario Santo Domingo in Colombia. It's a big foundation that also provides microloans. And we've been designing also a platform with them and designing the algorithm. So we are starting with them.
It sounds like that what you're developing is going to be really relevant and impactful within the community that you're doing it with. But how are you going to then scale to the next community and the next community? It seems like you will need to start over in each new community.
Yeah, so the platform is already, when the platform is already released, we know that we can use the same type of platform because, so as I was saying, we are a team from different parts of Latin America. I'm coming from Argentina, and one of my co-founders is from Colombia, and we came together because we saw the same problem and thinking of the same solution together, because I know that all the people I work with in microfinance in Argentina and Buenos Aires, it will be, you know, we know that this is really useful in different communities because they face the same problems. And 1/3 of our urban population live in these places where informal economy is concentrated and where there's a lot of trading locally. So we know that the solution might be similar to all the communities, and our way of implementing is creating partnerships. Let me see if I have the slide here. But it's creating partnership with local stakeholders that could be grassroots organizations, could be foundations, governments, banks that are already working with these communities, and we are providing a tool that then they can continue running.
I'm sorry, I thought the key problem you located in the beginning of your presentation was the access to finance and access to capital. Is that correct, with the 200%?
That's predatory, yeah, the
right, predatory loan. And to your question about the credit scoring, could you reflect a little bit more about why would we need the tokens if we have the marketplace already run by cash? You see what I mean?
Yes.
What is really the added value of the token here? Because I could imagine again that the credit scoring already be generated by the marketplace platform.
Yeah, there should be an incentive for people to use the marketplace and not doing in cash as they are doing, because it's not as easy for us to record the transactions that are in cash because we don't have M-Pesa as Kenya, right? It's different, the Latin American market, than African, for example. But also because we realize that there are these three problems. The one is information, who's selling what and where. That's why the marketplace as a map and visualization. And the second one is this cash flow, this lack of cash sometimes in the community where there's some transactions that are not happening. That's where we think that the voucher system, the trading system makes sense. And the third one is the access to capital. And also because microfinance nowadays is tackling individuals and not the community. So we are thinking, let's start from understanding how the economy in this community is working to then assess the credit worthiness of the individuals, and also thinking how we can create and retain wealth locally. So It's not just the access to capital itself, because accessing loans, that is already solved. Financial inclusion is not the problem. The problem is economic justice. So,
how are you making money, and what is your scalability in this?
So Khipu is free to use to all the users. It's free to use to all the users. We are not charging any transaction fee, because we want them to do as much transactions as possible on the platform. That's the way in which we can understand their local economy, that there's no clue nowadays of how these economies are working. And then we are charging, this is the example now with this microfinance institution, we are charging a setup fee, and then it will come from the interest from the microloans. And in the future, we are also thinking how we can work on the information of the things that people are buying locally to aggregate purchases, for example, and improve the supply chain.
That's great on a socio-economic impact. How are you planning to make money?
The interest from the loans.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mercedes. Let's give her a round of applause. So we have 2 more teams to go. Man, that flew by. Felt like we touched on so many challenges and opportunities in those less than 20 minutes. Now, I hope you're all thinking about your 1-minute pitches, because those are coming up after these. But with that, we move into our 4th finalists, coming from India, Madhav Dutt and Kaushal Shetty with their project Box.
Do you have presentation?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
So while you set that up, let me ask you, you focus on climate resilience, potent issue. How did you decide personally to make a foray into this subject matter?
Oh, so I have a personal connect to this story. When I was 7 years old, I used to live near the banks of River Suvarna in India. There was a small settlement of farmers who were affected by floods and rising water on a year-on-year basis. Every year, they used to face problems for 3 to 4 months in a year, and that is where we ideated the box. It's first of its kind sustainable emergency shelter. So yeah, that is how we ideated the box.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. Now over to you.
Awesome. All right. So before I introduce the box and talk about our approach to sustainable emergency shelters, let me share a bit of a story. Meet Aruni. She's a grandmother of 3 who lost her home and livelihood in the 2005 Mumbai floods. Now Kaushal here grew up in Mumbai, and he experienced the floods firsthand. And when he met with Aruni, we realized something very interesting. What we realized is that while losing your home and being forcibly displaced is devastating in and of itself, the actual implications and impact that this has on you goes far beyond just the roof over your head. What this means is that you're probably going to lose access to where you live, which means losing your job, livelihood, which means losing access to safe, usable water, not having access to a toilet, being exposed to the elements, facing extreme weather. And this directly translates, especially in India, in increased incidences of cholera and diarrhea. It also translates into children falling sick more often, not missing out on education. So essentially, losing your home has this ripple effect in these disasters on health, education, employment, across the board. And this forces millions of people every year, like Aruni, who are then forced to live in survival mode situations. Flooding in India is essentially something that happens very frequently. It's almost an annual thing where different parts of the country get flooded, and a lot of people end up losing their homes, their lives. And this has a lot of very real human implications in the sense that, just as a case, in the year 2010, 5.3 million people lost their homes. They were forcibly displaced because of floods, which had economic impacts of over $1.6 billion. And that's just in India, in flooding. Globally, because of floods in the same year, 38 million people lost their homes, and economic impacts crossed over $11 billion. 42.3 million people are forcibly displaced due to natural disasters every year. They're faced with realities that deny them a dignified life and fulfillment of their capabilities, and we hope to change that. So I'm very excited to introduce the box, which is the first of its kind climate-resilient modular emergency shelters. They're extremely low cost, and we hope that these act as a mechanism to help people restore personal security, dignity, and self-sufficiency in times of crisis and displacement. The box. We pioneered this concept of delivering the whole package as a technology. So, we deliver these collapsible units that include living spaces, solar panels, water tanks, access to water, all of that coming together in one single unit. These are designed deliberately to be deployed in these community-like structures inspired from the game Minesweeper, which build this sense of community through shared open spaces. All right, so how do we get the box to you? These come in folded, flattened modules, so all of this essentially collapses into this box-like structure from which it can very easily be assembled. This makes it extremely easy to transport across to disaster areas. I'm going to talk about 6 things very quickly about what makes this unique and what makes this very effective. 1, it is energy independent through rooftop solar panels. 2nd, this can be assembled in less than 30 minutes by 2 people with no specialized tools or training. Makes it extremely easy to deploy. These are super low cost. These are $350 to build, approximately 7 times cheaper than a conventional shelter. Come in with comprehensive sanitation systems built in, with rainwater catchment and filtration that allows people to get access to safe water along the way. And we did a bit of a case study comparing with the Zatari refugee camp in Jordan. In the same space, communities built with the box can house 6 times the number of people with the same personal space per person as compared to the current ad hoc setup that's being used there. All right, how do we get the box there? So super simple. These are collapsed down, transported in trucks because they can be flat, assembled, deployed in 30 minutes. They have a lifespan of about 3 to 5 years, after which these can be refurbished and moved to other areas that are affected by disasters. At the end of life, they're simply decommissioned, and the PVC is recycled. This is made from recycled PVC in the first place, so all in all, very sustainable. So now, obviously, there are a lot of emergency shelters out there. I'll briefly talk about what makes this unique, what makes this different, and I'll compare with 2 things. One is the IKEA Better Shelter, which was building on the same concept, and the second is a canvas tent, which is still the most popular, most frequently used mechanism for housing people who are escaping from natural disasters. The canvas tent is obviously significantly cheaper, but it comes at significant cost of durability. It's not really usable in flood-affected areas because of water leakage. There offers no flame protection, no privacy. It's not really a home, but more of a transient structure to put people in. Compared to the IKEA Better Shelter, 1, we deliver the whole package in the sense that we're bringing in water access and all of that inbuilt, and 2nd, it is significantly cheaper. All right, so what do we plan to do with this? We've partnered with local governments in Karnataka at this point, and we're also partnering with a lot of corporations. We're field testing 50 units now in starting January in 6 flood-affected areas. And after which, depending on funding, we're working to deploy 500 units in the same flood-prone areas in northern Karnataka. We hope that this intersection of technology and design innovation is going to help over 2,000 people in the next year rebuild their homes. Right. Both of us work with this organization called Clean the Gene that I had founded many years ago. We develop technology innovation for communities in crisis in general. At the moment, we're working in 62 countries with over 7,000 young volunteers. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. A hardware product, great to see, which brings obviously its own challenges. I would be interested to know if in what way you think about the production side of this, right?
Sure.
Of the supply chain, and who in your team is going to be working on that part of the game, because the product of course is great, but producing this at low cost, at high quantities. To that point, I would be interested, who is your customer here? And how much are they buying? Are they buying in bulk? So Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So I'll answer that. I'll answer both the parts separately. One is how do we sort of manufacture and how we're prototyping at the moment. We've partnered with facilities in China, Vietnam, and India to build these out. So as an organization, we've worked with them in the past, so we've sort of transferred that expertise here. Second, our target audience here are essentially aid agencies, global nonprofits, and local governments, which put in a lot of effort and financial resources to making sure that refugees, climate refugees, have access to shelter. So these are agencies like the UNHCR, NGOs like Habitat for Humanity, and governmental agencies across the board. They do buy in bulk, which does allow us to leverage economies of scale. We've already worked with some of them, and our first prototype experiment is going to happen in partnership with the local government in Karnataka. I hope that answers everything.
On a similar question, how will you manage your supply? I mean, will you have to keep inventory so that when a disaster hits and you get bulk orders, you can deploy quickly, or is this something where you'll try and sell them so that the UN and all the aid agencies will keep it on inventory?
Yes, so instead of us keeping inventory, it would make more sense that the aid agency keeps inventory. That is commonly how it's done at the moment also, in the sense that they have supplies of houses, different sorts of shelters that they then move and deploy. So that is in line with our model as well.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about why IKEA wouldn't just do some of the things you're doing. And even if you are successful, what's to stop others from copying it and doing it cheaper than you can?
Sure. So I think IKEA is actually doing this as a non-profit. This is not part of their core business. And this is done by IKEA Foundation, not IKEA, so I should have clarified that. And so obviously the reason that a lot of this tech is essentially bringing together a lot of different pieces of technical innovation, designed using extensive data, along with a lot of design innovation to bring this cost and everything to this point. Now, is it possible that economies of scale can further be leveraged to bring the cost lower? Yes, but that is not something that we see happening out there at this juncture, and this approach to design is sort of fundamentally different to what's been built so far. I hope that.
This has a little bit of a darker side in terms of revenue. You're hoping on disasters for this to sell more. The governments are hoping to build real housing to make sure that that's an electoral ballot for some other emerging markets, that they're giving permanent housing rather than the kacha jhopris, those kind of stuff. Given that aspect, and assuming that there's a better disaster resilient sustainable program that's been put in place, where do you see your business model evolving?
So I think obviously this is one of those cases where one does hope that what we build is never necessary. But the reality is that a very large portion of India, even now, and a very, very large portion of the developing world lives in situations where they don't have access to housing. So assuming that even at like a 10-year or 20-year juncture where housing is being built, there are lots of people who live along low-lying areas, coasts, informal settlements, lots of people living in India in slums. Maybe Kaushal can add a little more color from the Mumbai perspective. But broadly speaking, this is a problem that's very real today, and which is why we feel that these solutions are sort of necessary today.
And to add to that, the point mentioned by you, the Paka houses that the government is building, that requires a bit of time to be coming. Like it requires a good 6 to 7 months to be built. Till then, our shelter can go there and act as a kind of a solution for the people over there. So yeah, something like that.
What are your margins? So it costs about $350. What are you selling it for?
So essentially, we're working at this juncture as a social enterprise. We're trying to do this at a no-loss basis. So that plus operating, we're not adding margins at the moment.
And that works from a scalable perspective, from a scalability perspective?
Yeah, so we're including operating costs.
Okay. I've got 2 quick questions. So I'm looking at the flammability protection. You have over 7 minutes escape time compared to IKEA's over 2 minutes. I just did a quick Google on IKEA while we were talking, and IKEA seems to be held back because of their flammability issues. So how do you tend to address that? That seems to be key. 2 is, have you thought about getting into another segment like affordable housing. And also the 350 compared to 1,250, you're doing a cost per unit, but IKEA is holding what, semi-private shared? Like how many people compared to a single family home? I don't know how you calculate that.
So that is cost per unit. Cost per person, IKEA holds about 7-8 people. Cost per person would be similar, but our unit comes essentially with furniture, everything. It's like the whole thing. So that also has overhead costs that come on top to actually make it livable. That is one. That's sort of a small little model there. And then the other question was around flame resistance. So yes, we are working actively on figuring out ways in which that could be improved. And we do have, Kaushal can maybe add some on coatings, etc., that we've explored. But that is a key factor that we looked at and learned from the IKEA example, because that's a barrier to deployment. Why don't you?
So we have added multiple layers of insulation, and along with that there's a coating for fire resistance. That is where we have the number of greater than 7 minutes coming into the picture. That is the main comparison that we're having with IKEA right now. Yeah.
Two things. I'm not very fully understanding why this solution would be a solution to the problem of flooding in particular. I could imagine this solution be relevant to many other situations in the world. And secondly, could you reflect a little bit on the timeline of your product? So do you have a prototype, and do you seek funding at any stage, or do you have received funding?
Sure. So all right, I'll answer both quickly. Flooding was just used as a case study. Yes, this is applicable for all, essentially any sort of natural disaster where people end up losing their homes. That is one. And second is that yes, so we have a prototype ready. We are working with, we've received initial grants from a company called Coins Global, as well as in partnering with Habitats for Humanity. We've also partnered with local governments, so that what we hope to do in the next year is one, run a field test pilot, and second is scale that out to a bigger deployment of about 500 units sometime in next year.
Thank you both so much. And now we move on to our final finalist, Nhance Oporum and Soso Care. He is going to be coming to us live via video from Nigeria. Nhance, can you hear us? Give us...
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. Okay, and we'll be seeing you shortly, hopefully.
Okay. I think you press that thing.
Oh, great. Okay, and you can hear us fine, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Wonderful. We're honored to have you here. Thank you for making the time. I know it's pretty late in the day over there. So my first question to you, and really the big question, recyclables and health insurance. What inspired you to make the connection between the two?
Well, these are two big problems in Nigeria, and we're looking at ways of solving this problem. I have a woman that always comes to my house to collect waste. Every day with 3 children, every week she always come around and say, do you have anything for me? So, and she always sell it to buy food. So at that point, I figured out if she could sell this thing to buy food, we could also use it to pilot something else. Then we combine it into our health insurance.
Okay, thank you so much, Nhance. And now it's over to you for your 7-minute pitch.
Thank you for having me. Well, I'm deeply sorry that I'm not there presently, but it's a great thing that we have technology which can allow us to do so many things irrespective of location and distance. If you're born in a developing world like myself, you will understand that our world is faced with so many challenges. Poor access to healthcare, unemployment, increasing urbanization, and hunger. Can you go to the slide? Or can you go to the next slide? Thank you very much for the short video. Well, if you're born in a developing country like myself, you understand that our world is faced with a lot of difficulties, poor access to healthcare, low food, hunger, and unemployment. Go to the next slide, please. The next slide. I was Can you, thank you. No problem, sorry. The problem slide. Yeah, thank you very much. In 2017, I was visiting a friend in the eastern part of Nigeria who was on admission in a hospital. While visiting him, a pregnant woman and her husband and a couple of other women were rushing to the hospital on a tricycle. When they got into the hospital, the nurses asked the husband to make deposit for her treatment, for the wife's treatment. Because he didn't have the money, he started calling a couple of friends to see if he could raise money in order to provide health care for his wife. At a point, he got someone who was willing to borrow him the money, but he would need to mortgage his bag. In the evening, after some couple of hours, 4 or 5 hours, I visited my friend again in the hospital. I saw a lot of people outside the hospital crying, and you could hear the grief in their voices. When I went upstairs, I asked my friend, he told me that the pregnant woman that was brought earlier today, that she didn't make it. Like that woman, every single year, there are about 55,000 Nigerians who lose their life on pregnancy and childbirth. And the devastating thing is that 70% of these deaths could have been averted if they had access to quality health care. So when you break these numbers down, that's roughly 7 women losing their lives every 10 minutes. Pregnancy is a beautiful thing. I don't think a woman should lose her life trying to have a child. In Nigeria, less than 5% of the entire population have access to health insurance. And because they don't have health insurance, they have to rely on their pockets to pay for their health. Now, because they rely on their pocket to pay for their health, that means they have to make poor healthcare choices. We looked at that and wanted to create a health insurance for them. But we realized that even though we create a health insurance, people like Mrs. Sarah, who earn less than $14 a month, cannot still pay for her insurance and that of her children. We looked at the environment. Waste was piling up. In Nigeria, there are about 30 million tons of waste generated yearly and about 200 PET bottles. And the annoying thing is that just 5% of this waste is collected and recycled. At that point, we said, how can we tackle a problem using another problem? We created social care. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. Social care is a low-cost health insurance where a user could pay as low as $1 or use recyclable as a form of premium. What we did is we partnered with a very big insurance company to improve to digitize the process and cut off the entire value chain of health insurance to ensure that we could achieve efficiency and effectiveness. So a user could have access to 991 hospitals across all states in Nigeria. How does it work? You go to the next slide, please. Yeah, this is how it works. We went into partnership with a very big insurance company that served the upper end of the market so they could help us serve the bottom of the pyramid. What we did is a user could pay $1 where we make 30% of that money, send it to the insurance company who distributes it to the hospitals, or users who, like Mrs. Sarah, who don't have money, could pick recyclables, could be cardboard, it could be PET bottles, it could be single plastics, and donate it to our 17 drop-off location. Who sells this waste, return it back to us as a form of premium, which we send to the insurance company that is distributed across the hospitals. The next slide, please. Now, here are the plans. The plans covers primary health care and secondary health care, which means it covers antenatal and postnatal care. So a user could pay as tiny as $1 or $2.5 to access health care. There are other services which are there, laboratory tests and consultation, emergencies. Our goal is to ensure that we bring insurance to the last mile. That is why we designed a plan for the average person. Please, the next slide. And that's how you could see immunization as well for children because we want to cover them. Now, has the model ever worked before? Serving the poor requires serving them on tiny margins. It's like serving the bottom of the pyramid. You have to build on tiny margins because these markets are big. But you understand that for you to build a sustainable market, you have to rely on solutions that where you charge less but offer good quality. Companies like Bima started it in Ghana, a micro health insurance, and within the short period they have about 9 million users and they've scaled to over 14 countries. Jamai in Tanzania started the same solution where they offer low-cost health insurance to people in Tanzania, and presently they have about 20,000 users. So our goal is to bring insurance to the last mile because we understand Nigeria is big and just less than 5% of the population have health insurance. So we want to offer them this solution because we understand the market needs it. The next slide. Now, because Nigeria is a big market itself, the healthcare insurance, health industry is valued at over $2 trillion, and our goal is to serve 40% of this population who live in slum and suburb, the poor, the average woman who considers insurance as expensive luxury. These are our target market. Recyclables on their own is valued at over $150 million. So there is market opportunity in those markets. The next slide. Now, when we did a pilot test within June to see if there's a value in this market, we made road cleaners to see if they could buy into the insurance. Within 3 weeks that we did the pilot test, 96 women keyed into the insurance, donating us recyclables, cardboards, and different things. On 7th of October, we launched live to see if it could work. Between 7th of October till now, we have about 550 users and we have a revenue of $6,000. We show that the market is, that there's a market and a market opportunity here because people really need health cover. The next slide. This is our financial project. Because we understand that Nigeria alone is a very big market. So even if we try to serve 5 to 7% of the entire population, that's roughly 6 to 7 million people, which is going to give us a revenue of $350,000 in the next 5 years. If we take out our operating expenses, we're still going to have a profit of $65 million because the market itself is big. Based on what we did in 55 days with little to no marketing budget, and we did $6,000. The next slide.
Thank you, Nhance. So we are out of time now, and we're going to move into 8 minutes of questions from our jury, starting now. And we ask that you speak as closely into the mic as possible. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
So wonderful that you're here with us via the screen. It's great that you've been able to do this in this manner. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could you just go back to the product one more time and maybe in very few simple sentences what your product is, because I would like a little bit more clarity on that.
Okay. Social care is a micro health insurance where people could pay $1. Now, if they don't have money to pay for $1, they could donate recyclables to us, which will sell to finance their health insurance. So basically, we are tackling two problems, and we're also making money from two problems.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Can I understand the business model a little bit? So you would receive the recyclables potentially, and then who are you selling that to? Who's the market? What's the capacity of that market? And then you're forming these relationships with the hospitals so your clients can actually attend any one of those hospitals if they have an emergency?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I'm just curious about, since this is happening in other countries, what prevents competitors from coming into your market and competing with you?
Well, what prevents them from competing with us is our unique model. Our unique model allows us to use words, and we've built over time because we have experts that understand our industry. So the Nigerian market is not like every other market. Every market has its uniqueness. So if you're coming into the Nigerian market, there are companies like MicroInsure that try to do the solution, but they didn't get to the bottom of the last mile. So for us, we have a uniqueness and our strength in this market because we understand it very well.
And who's buying your recyclables? Who's your client base? What's their capacity?
Well, we went into partnership with EcoBata. EcoBata is a recycling company that buys this insurance, and what we try to do is to have distribution centers across different states and cities in Nigeria. So even if you consume a pack of water, you can just drop it and it will count as a point for you. So EcoBata is a strong network in terms of collecting those waste. They handle it on our behalf.
Thank you very much again for the presentation. You mentioned in the presentation that your commission is around 30%. Please help me understand a little bit how you calibrated that number, and then how does that tie to your scaling projections that you showed with us in one of the slides? Do you anticipate reducing that commission over time, and why, if that's the case?
Well, actually, we have two plans. We have the bronze plan and the silver plan. At the bronze plan, we make about 30 cents, and at the silver plan, we make about $1.20. So if in a year we could make for one person $3.60 on a bronze plan, which is about $1 for the service. So if we do this service in a year for about 5% of the entire population, which is about 6 million people, we're still going to make a profit of about $25 million. So not to talk of the profit that we're going to generate from the West, which is about 15% as well. So that was how I came up with the number. So if we combine that from the silver plan, we also make about, if we're selling it to about if we're selling about 4 million people on the silver plan, we make about $40 million on profit after revenue alone, because that's about $1.20 in sale per month.
So basically, you're saying that if someone pays you $1, you keep 30 cents on the bronze plan.
Perfectly.
Okay, and then how much do you pay? You pay 70 cents to the hospital per patient?
We're in a partnership with one of Nigeria's biggest health insurance company who serve the upper end of the market.
Okay, so it's a HMO.
It's the lower end, the bottom. It's a HMO. Perfect.
It's a HMO.
So they handle the process.
It's a HMO.
It's a HMO, yeah.
And you pay 70 cents to them, and they
Yes.
offer the medical services to the patient.
Yes.
How many times can the patient go there, and when does the insurance company say that's it?
Well, on a bronze plan, it covers as high as $700. On a silver plan, it covers as high as $1,200. So when you finish this plan on yourself, that means you have to find alternatives. But we've also tried to create telemedicine services so people could call a doctor in remote locations. So that way it reduces the visit to the hospital and helps them manage their health care if they will need it on the long run.
How much would Hygeia HMO charge a patient without a partnership with you? Like, let's say I just want to buy a plan. Instead of $1, how much do I have to pay?
Well, actually, Hygeia is one of the biggest insurance companies and health insurance company in Nigeria and has raised millions of dollars from IFC. Hygeia serves the upper end of the market, and for each of their insurance costs about $250 to $300, because it's basically for the rich.
And this is a month, right? So $1 a month on your plan.
For our plan is a month, yeah.
Okay, $1 versus $250. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And you're not an app, so you actually physically collect. I'm just trying to understand the business model. Do you have? I know that you partner with a recycling plant, but are all these people, women, children, are they dropping the things off at the plant, or do you have a collection facility? How does the logistics work? Are you owning that, and then you get paid by the recycling plant, or they go directly and drop it off? Yeah.
That's what I said earlier. Because we are young and we try to cut costs, we went into collaboration with the insurance company, with the waste collection company. The waste collection company has different drop-off locations, which means even if you drink a can of water, like that park in front of you, you can always drop it at the nearest insurance drop-off center that is close to you. They have a data.
But what are you innovating? Like, I mean, if this infrastructure already exists, you got to put some technology or something there that makes it more efficient, right? So what are you adding to it? Or somebody else can just partner with them as well.
Well, actually, someone can actually partner with them, like you said earlier. But the difference is that when a user drops any plastic, by default it gets to us. We get the number. What we are trying to do is to move out waste in the environment. And
so it gets to you. Sorry. Okay.
Yes.
It goes to you.
Yes, exactly. When you drop a pack, we get the figure that you're dropping a pack. When you drop a cardboard, we get the figure that you're dropping a pack. Once you reach
how do you track that? Sorry. How do you track that?
It's streamlined between us and the waste collection company.
Okay.
But just on that, I think in terms of understanding the ability to scale up, how do you efficiently track? How are you receiving information that a recycling drop-off has taken place and that is equivalent to the payment that you're expecting from that particular client? How is that process working in an efficient way so that you can scale?
Well, because we started young, because we are young, how it's working basically now is a user will get SMS that he has dropped a waste as a form of receipt, because there's market distrust and you need to build trust in this kind of market. So when they drop off those wastes, we get the figure on our back end that so person has dropped a certain number. When it gets to the particular cover, we get an automated alert that this person has covered his health insurance for that particular period. So we expect the payment from the waste recycling company.
Time, but we're aware of technology constraints, so we'd like to offer another minute for judges if they have any questions.
Yeah, you're saying that the person has to pay $1 every month, correct? And your entire business model is based on the fact that he's paying $1 every month. What if he stops paying?
Well, the market is big, like I said earlier. There are about 80 million people in Nigeria who don't have health insurance. That's more than 40%. So if he doesn't pay for next month, he's likely to pay the upper month, because we have SMS that tries to track these people, encourage them to stay healthy. The goal is not just for them to be on the platform. The goal is to encourage them to stay healthy, go for family planning, stay away from having children if they don't have resources. So when they back off of the plan, after some time, we use this SMS to encourage them to key into the plan in order to prioritize their healthcare needs because they don't have resources. So that's basically why we are doing it.
Okay, thank you all for your questions. And Nhance, thank you again for your time. Let's give him a round of applause. So again, huge and heartfelt thanks to our finalists who've traveled a long way in time and space to give you these presentations you're seeing. Let's also give our judges a round of applause for their time and expertise here today. Audience members, you have just under 2 hours to cast your votes. I said earlier it closes at 1:30. It's actually 1 p.m., so the clock's ticking. And we now have a slide with instructions for you on how to vote. So you just download the mobile app, or you can do it on the website. You also have lunch hour to do that, but why wait? You probably have your minds made up already. So now we move into, man, we're giving you guys a lot of work. We now move into 1-minute pitches from you. So how this is going to work, we're going to be as quick, concise, and organized with this as possible. So you are going to line up on that side of the room, and there will be someone standing here with a mic. You will walk to the middle of the stage with that mic. The clock's going to be set to 1 minute. You'll make your 1-minute pitch, focusing on the challenge, the opportunity, and your solution. And then you're going to walk off stage here. We are going to clap you off stage at 1 minute, just like the Oscars. So brace yourself and keep it short. So if you can slowly start lining up over there, we'll get the mics to you. We'll have folks from the steering committee running mics to and from you. So be brave, take risks. As you know, this will be recorded and available to you in the future. It's a great way to start a conversation, test your ideas, and maybe even test something that was born during the case challenge. So over to you, and I hope the line gets long. So start farming up. Yeah, let's do it. Yes, let's give them a round of applause.
Gabby, do you have the folks who are going to be in? Yep. All right, come on. Yep. Here we go. I need 2 more people. Let's go for you. Thank you.
And if we can set the timer to 1 minute.
Stand over here. Okay. I need 1 more person.
So please start with your name, where you're coming from, and then we'll start the timer, okay? So, hey.
And then, yep. Thanks, Maria.
Good afternoon. My name is Theo Sharp. I am coming from Berlin, Germany, by the way of New York. So globally, there are 775 million displaced refugees. Many of them have gone through really traumatic events. Many of them have relocated to a new country. But a lot of them struggle with mental health issues. A lot of them do not have the ability to access mental health professionals in their new home. What I'm proposing is my solution is to connect refugees all around the world with access to therapists, with access to mental health professionals, to be able to help them to kind of destigmatize and kind of maintain their mental health. So by creating an app to connect refugees with mental health professionals where they could communicate, where they could talk within their own languages, and give them a platform to be able to live a better life. Thank you.
Nice, we're keeping to time. Okay, next person. Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Shudipto Bhattacharya from India. My solution that we are working on is related to solving power distribution and smart production and channeling of electricity throughout India. In India, in spite of there being more availability of power, 5% more power being available as compared to the demand being there, there is at least 30% power that's not being available at the places where it's required. So for that, the reason for that is the availability-based tariff system that works in India. We are working on a solution which depends on IoT at each node along the power train and smart contract-based, a permission smart contract-based solution across different power providers, right down from the initial provider down to the final user, and so that there is no possibility of power being misutilized. Thank you.
So imagine you're going to the toilet, and when you're going around, you're just insecure if someone's watching you, as if there's a camera or in the toilet. Do you think that's pretty nice? Imagine going to a toilet, you're sitting right here and you really, really have to pee. You go in and all the toilets are really dirty and stinky. And then just go out. And then what option do you have? You openly defecate, right? So we take going to the toilet for granted, but in India, that's not the case. And so India is currently the open defecation capital of the world. And so there are two problems for India. The supply side, that they're not accessible clean toilets, but also the demand side, that it's a cultural thing that because toilets aren't clean, you openly defecate anyway. So one of the problems I'm solving is to create behavior change through a poop card. So you tap in, poop, you tap out. And India has a high penetration rate, so we're creating a digital payment system for that. So thank you.
Hello, my name is David Cahale from Sydney, Australia. I'm currently the CEO and founder of Panther Group and Panther Transportation. I'm currently working on the flagship project of the Philippines, infrastructure project by Build, Build, Build. It's a transportation initiative. The country currently has 265,000 individual public transport operators of public jeepneys. We are currently developing the digital payments system for those systems. The lack of synergy within that actual industry is one of the key issues. So we're building a fleet management system for all of those people, also a data center also for the government, so that they have clear insights into what's going on into the roads. And so we're developing a smart AI system that also helps facilitate most of the information and congestion problems. So we're trying to solve those issues. We're also developing smart payment systems to help the country transition into contactless payments and also bring fintech and banking institutions and online banking to those areas of the Philippines, because currently they actually have 80% of the population lacks banking at the same time. So thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ali and I've come from Canada. We all know in the entire world that the carbon emissions is increasing, and certain countries around the world, they actually put CO2 quotas and carbon taxes on the emissions. Right now in Europe, it's about $30 a ton of CO2, and the companies are still not mining, they're still paying the cost for it. So what we do is we take the carbon CO2 emissions from incinerators and we convert that into organic and sustainable biofuels. We do this through a patented electrolytic process. This process is actually not new. It's been done for 50 years, but our new solution is actually doing it in one step compared to two steps. This makes it an economically feasible solution, which saves the waste incinerators millions of dollars per annum. So we're interested to collaborate with other people that are working in carbon sequestration. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maimouna. I'm from Senegal. I'm a founder of a children recreation center in Dakar. So my project is about implicated children in the process of smart city and sustainability, because in my country at the school level there is no much community service. So what I'm trying to do at the club is to implicate children from the age of 3 to 12 in community action, so that it will solve all the issues the world is going on actually in the next 20 years. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Marisela from Mexico, and I just want to figure out a couple of dots that we've been talking during these days. And one is that every year 1.3 million people die every day on the roads of our cities and between our cities, which is basically the same number of people dying out of natural disasters. The worst part is that is the first cause of death for people like us, like young adults from 15 to 29 years old, and from kids from 5 to 14 years old that are just going through a conversation to school, to work, and we're just dying crush. What's the problem? We have a false perception on risk where we think we're gonna die from another cause, when in reality we can just die crossing the street here, and I just don't want this to happen to any one of you. And what we need to do is to, first of all, stop blaming only the users, stop blaming only the person, but really claiming the streets, claiming the use of space, so we can walk and cycle safely and work on safe system approach.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandrine Tabong. I'm from Cameroon, and I work with rural women. Our organization is called Women in Humanitarian Dynamics. It's a movement which redefines quality of life for rural women in Cameroon through investing in the generations of women leaders as the drivers of quality transformation in society. What is unique about our project is the fact that we invest in women using livestock agriculture. So we set up groups of community leaders, train them in the best practices in livestock, and also waste management, because livestock farming produces high levels of carbon dioxide, which also affects climate change. So we equip these women with financial capabilities and a source of livelihood. And on the other hand, because this livestock farm causes pollution, we also train them in best practices using the biogas technology. So this biogas technology addresses two problems. While it curbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
Thank you so much. Please, the next. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, hi. How's everyone doing? So I'm Rusem. Think about it, has every one of you seen The Martian, the movie about Matt Damon that was stranded on the Mars and he was growing food? So think about the growth of our population. The CIA World Factbook estimates that by 2050, about 9.8 billion people will live alive. The Harvard Business Review estimates about 58 to 98% there will be an increase in food. So how can we solve that challenge, and how can we provide our selves with that increase of human growth, population at the same time, sustain itself in agricultural? One of the ideas is when you think about market platforms and vertical farming, so how can you share that knowledge, and how can you at the same time reduce green gas emission? Just think as an idea. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mustajab, and I'm from Pakistan. So we are working on a revolutionary water purification product, and in that product, you can pass at the worst a sewage water, and it gets converted into drinking water. And the best thing is that it does not use any electricity or any energy. It's based on membrane technology. In Africa or in the subcontinent or the Asian side, there is a lot of trouble with clean water, and you can say there's a lot of shortage of clean drinking water. So with our product, we are actually solving this problem, and we are enabling a lot of people settling in rural areas who don't have access to clean drinking water, who don't have the money to buy mineral water, to buy these filters at a very low cost, and who have a long longevity, and they can use it and live a good life. So it's solving the health problem and enabling people to get clean drinking water. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Is it still morning? 11:48, that counts. It's morning. Good morning, everyone. All right, so my name is Judy. During this 2-day conference, I'm hoping to discover, join, and contribute to a venture that's working on one of the following concepts or something similar. Number 1, national infrastructure development, a venture working on fortifying political infrastructure in a politically fragile state or country through anti-corruption technology that tracks the movement of national funds and also tracks and regulates voting processes. Number 2, agile professional development association that focuses on offering market valuable professional development to its members so that they can increase their profit. And number 3, initiatives that use creative media or messaging in a way that positively impacts an industry or a sector. So if you're involved with a venture like one of those here, feel free to contact me. Look on the app for this event. My name is Judy O on the app, and just, read about me there.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abdilda, and I'm the head of technology brokerage team within the World Bank Fostering Productive Innovation Project. I'm from Kazakhstan. Imagine a situation when you are looking for a new place. Would it be a restaurant? Are you looking for a new office? How much time is spent if it's not to your expectations? So you go to the place, you look around, and 2D photos cannot show you the real picture. The thing is, we do have the solution. 360 cameras. So you can watch the whole 360 tour, and it's available in the market. But the problem is that this technology is on the early adoption curve. Verify360.com allows you to enter the marketplace for the services. So the property owners and those who can provide the services match on the same platform, and we can have a better world with lower CO2 emissions because we don't need to go to that place and to waste time, resources. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Sanji Queen. I'm a social entrepreneur and founder of Mama Safe Birthing Kit in Cameroon. So in Cameroon, every day, I work to reduce maternal and infant mortality in Cameroon. Every day in Cameroon, at least 20 women and 50 children die of maternal mortality issues. So Mama Safe Birthing Kit is actually a solution that tries to train traditional birth attendants. It's a kit that contains all the necessary supplies women need for delivery. So Mama Safe Birthing Kits goes to rural communities. We train traditional birth attendants on how to carry out safe delivery using the sterile materials in the birth kit. We train the traditional birth attendants on how to use the items and how to identify complicated pregnancies for early referrals in hospitals in urban cities. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. How many of you eat vegetables, food crops, and believe that with compost we can have a resilient, inclusive, and sustainable future? My name is Joshua Ebien. I'm the co-founder of Jumela Limited. It's a agro-technology company based in Nigeria that develops compost, organic compost, from plant waste. Essentially what we do is we go to the client, we take soil samples, we figure out what you want to cultivate, and then we do research and design a
organic compost strictly from plant waste that allows you to achieve your nutrient soil profile. And so we've been able to produce about 0.5 metric ton since we started operations in May, and we're looking to expand this solution for the society. And so thank you very much, and we're looking to also have a mobile app that allows us to scale across different countries. Thank you.
Hi everyone. As we all know, the world population is getting older, and as we age, more and more chronic diseases start to trouble us, such as hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, or diabetes. So I'm not sure if you know, like how you eat, how you sleep, how you exercise, all affect your health. So we're a team sponsored by the European Commission trying to develop solutions based on IoT and AI. So we detect how people sleep. We receive feedbacks on how much they eat or how well they eat and how well they sleep, and try to make people more healthy, basically. So if you're interested in our project, please follow us on Facebook, like Heart ITN, or find me on the attendees app called Nhance. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello guys, my name is Yakob Ninggolan. I'm from Indonesia. As you all know, education is one of the most crucial factors for an individual, group of people, and country to make a move. Hence, we would like to ensure the quality is there for our citizens. So, with almost 271 people in Indonesia, our education's quality is among the lowest in the world. Hence, I and my friend are currently working on an online education project by simply connecting high school students with those quality education providers since 2017. Per now, we have been connecting over 17,000 high school students all across Indonesia, and we are looking forward to transfer more students in the future. So just in case you guys have the similar interest on education, specifically on education technology, please let me know. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mai Timothy. I'm from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And given that we deal a lot with waste management, and it's a big concern in my country, so my project proposed to replace the hydroelectric system that we have, and to replace that by a waste incineration plant that can actually generate energy and solve the problem of waste management. So we are working to get the government to take a closer look at that, and thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Shaila Aga. I'm from Kenya, and I know Kenyans are synonymous with marathon runners and fit people, but guess what? We're not. We don't run, we don't walk. We take our cars and our scooters to work, to the shop, everywhere. And as a result, we have loads of traffic, loads of CO2 emissions, and it's horrible. I've always liked cycling, and I made it my mission to encourage people to cycle more. Because in Kenya, the only people who ride their bicycles are watchmen and casual workers. So I work with an organization known as the Paul Tergat Foundation. We're trying to encourage people more to cycle more, making cycling cool, showing them that you don't have to do a lot of work. It's actually a lot of fun, and it's better for your fitness. And we're trying to get bicycle lanes as well. So yeah, that's what I'm doing for our CO2 emissions in Nairobi.
So there are now 500 million kids in Africa. 50 million more are born every year. We can see this as a problem, but it's also an opportunity. As we prepare to enter a new decade, my team is on a mission to becoming the largest classroom in Africa. We've set ambitious goals to make effective edutainment freely available to over 60 million kids in all countries of sub-Saharan Africa by 2025. Our vision is for a new generation of kids in Africa who have grown up with Ubongo edutainment to be more equipped with the education and critical skills and positive mindsets to change their own lives, communities, and cities for the better. So at Ubango, we're working to create top quality localized edutainment and deliver it to families in Africa via the accessible technologies they have already, so TV, radio, and mobile phones.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mwende Mololo. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm sure some of you, or most of you, took a flight to get here, and that means you have a carbon footprint that you've left behind. I'm part of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers community, and I'm based in the Nairobi hub. What we do is we have community-based projects, and one of them is Plant My Age. So we go to schools and plant trees, and planting trees is the most effective way to mitigate climate change. I would encourage you all, at least in your lifetime, to plant your age or a multiple of your age in order to mitigate climate change. Thank you. There is no planet B.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Sangil. I'm from the Costa Rica. I'm from Costa Rica. I was going to say the Costa Rica hub. How many of you have heard about Costa Rica being a super green country? Yeah, so Costa Rica has been very recognized internationally for being a green country. However, I believe that sustainability has to go beyond green. Sustainability has to be equal, sustainability has to ensure local economic development, and it has to ensure well-being for people. So I founded an NGO called the Center for Urban Sustainability, and basically what we do is we try to transform our cities and accelerate the transition towards more sustainable cities, including local economic development and well-being and environmental sustainability. What we do is that we do training, capacity building, top-bottom advisory for decision makers, but also bottom-up work with local communities. Thank you very much.
I have a feeling that my teammates from the South American Mobility team know what I'm about to go into. Hi, my name is Caroline. I'm from New York, originally from Poland. Raise your hand if you've ever been on the subway in New York City. Gross, right? How many of you have been to Singapore and have seen the congestion charges and how wonderful their subway is? Nice, right? So something that really inspired me while I was in Singapore, and what I hope to bring back to New York, but it can be applied in any urban center because carbon emissions are high and the carbon footprint is very high, is implementing these congestion charges and lobbying to the local government to partner with private sectors in order to subsidize full-time Uber drivers to have electric cars. Like I said, implement congestion charges for those that still insist on driving personal cars through the city during rush hour, and then also using that money to funnel into the public transportation systems to make New York City subways cleaner. Thank you.
Wow, this was amazing practice for your elevator pitches, because yeah, you're standing in an elevator with that person you want to convince. You got to have something this short. So really, you guys are troopers. Thank you so much for doing this and being brave. And to the employers out there, wow, look at the ideas up here. Hire more young people. Listen to the young people on your team and make those young people become employers too. So this is a great message, and you guys were case in point. We now move on to lunch. The break, we will be back here at 1 p.m. for what I promise you will be a power-packed panel. But again, you have 1 hour to vote. Give it some thought, plant your votes, eat your food, and I'll see you back here at 1 p.m.